first up, JP, we've got to talk. The reason I'm wearing this this fancy CM Punk t-shirt, mate, it's Collision Week. We are, in fact, here. It is somehow arrived. AEW Collision will be debuting this week, this Saturday. We do know now as well, and can confirm that it's on Fight. So that's good. And apparently it's part of your Fight Plus package as well. I don't think that was a guarantee, even when we thought it was definitely going to be on Fight. So that's worked out really well for us. Left it a little bit late, I would say, to make that announcement. They tend to do that. It's kind of there's a lot of assumptions going into this. I think there's things we can kind of talk about with like the general excitement level to what should be a major moment this Saturday with CM Punk's return to AEW and the start of an AEW roster split, which still hasn't been formally announced. I think you're supposed to just put the pieces together based on who's in the adverts and who isn't. I think that's what Tony is kind of hoping people will do. But either way, it's this week, JP. What's your excitement level? The world's changing this week, mate. Mainly for us podcasting. We're gonna have to figure out a way, as we've been chatting to our patrons about, to fit all this stuff in. We think we figured it out, but it's gonna be a wild period over the next few weeks. Lots going on.
There is. And I have to say, looking forward to it. I mean, these days, the idea of more wrestling television kind of seems slightly terrifying. However, this one, the reason why I'll be going along with it is precisely as we were saying, we got Phillip Brooks back in terms of CM Punk. And there is things, my general thoughts is how is this going to look and feel to say Dynamite? Is it going to be that with just all the broken toys in it and problematic children? If that is, like, I can't pretend that I'm like necessarily excited about watching that all the time. I'm not a fan of this main event, to be honest with you. Like, I'm sure the match will be fun. 6.
It really doesn't excite me, to be honest. No. Like, I'm not. I think people probably expect me to be like, "Oh, isn't it cool? CM Punk's picked his own match," but it just looks like that, doesn't it? Like, they're already putting out the CM FTR t-shirts and like the Bret Hart motif, which whatever, they're a gang of nerds. They're gonna do that. But like, looking at that graphic that we got on screen now, like Joe, Jay White, and Juice Robinson, it just. But I mean, a lot of it's based on like rumors and innuendo we've seen about Punk taking a shine to Jay White. But that's the only reason this match is taking place. CM Punk wants to wrestle these 3 wrestlers. Like, is that supposed to be the kayfabe story going into it? He wants to wrestle his old mate Joe. He kind of fancies wrestling Jay White because there's no reason Joe is with these two either.
No,
it's a proper road to type main event, and I think my initial reaction to it was like, oh, that'll be cool. I hear John Pollock say, well, maybe that means you get more Punk on the show because you get your 6-man, plus you get your show opening promo. Maybe there's something to that as well. But I think for me, I don't think it doesn't kill, by excitement in Collision. I'm excited to watch it. It sounds like it's gonna be up my street. Let's see what they actually do with the match and what the stories are coming out of it. But I think I would have gone with a more blockbuster main event. This is a moment where, you might not want to do, Punk and, say, Jay White with no build, fair enough. Punk and Joe, maybe you don't want to do that either with no build, but I would argue maybe that's the perfect match to do with no build, because I think with its history, as we're going to find out this week on Patreon, I think the 240-something-year-old lads are going to struggle to live up to that history. So maybe you just do a one and done, and it's just it's a nice little nostalgia hit as your main event. I don't know. I just feel like a proper CM Punk singles match for this first show was what the doctor ordered, because you don't want to leave people in any kind of like doubt of what this show is. This isn't Rampage 2. This is Dynamite 2. This is your other Dynamite on a Saturday night. This is an important big time show. I think you want to put your best foot forward, really, and make that clear from the very start. And yes, Punk's there, but I don't know if this match makes that clear.
No, it doesn't make it clear at all. And I think there's issues with this where, like, the only reason why you would think, okay, this makes sense to have them together is if you're following the minutiae of what is being said and being kind of rumored backstage. And that's not enough to kind of launch a prime time television show that you're being paid a lot of money for. It isn't particularly exciting. It's, again, like I said, I'm sure the match will be fun. I'm sure it would be like one of these.
It's dumb, but we'll have a great time. He's probably right,
But But the problem is like if you have the Joe match, there's actually archive footage you could use to build that match and why this match is kind of important, and you could have done it that way. The Jay White stuff, it's like, well, if you really want to work with Jay White, why don't you cut a promo and have Jay White come out or something along those lines?
Or the other
Like
way around.
actually
Jay White could have been on TV doing
Yeah.
that. Joe could be on TV cutting promos the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
What else is he doing?
And going, I'm sick of hearing that this is all about CM Punk. I'm not interested in that. And then CM Punk comes out. There are things like that, which is actually the storytelling process, that all of that is being kind of ignored. And it's, why don't we go into these what are perceived as dream matches? And the novelty value of this stuff, as we saw with, frankly, the Bucks and Kenny when they were doing these kind of six matches, as much fun as they are for people in the arena, this is what I think of as a house show main event. You're a big company and you're doing house shows. You put this together, you've got a trio of heels, and you've got like CMFTR, and that's fine, and that works. This feels like kind of very supremely lazy. I don't feel excited. I know he's taking the pinfall before the match has even happened. You look at it and go, all right, well, Juice Robinson gets pinned then, and then there'll be some sort of angle involving either Samoa Joe or Jay White. But the randomness of them as well, it's like there's no explanation for it. Unless you're thinking, oh, CM Punk wants to work with one of these two. Which of these two is he going to have the feud with? Oh, that's enough to sell it on. So, yeah, I'm let down.
Definitely not. Yeah, that's it. And it's not a disaster because I know I'm going to enjoy it. I know I'm going to enjoy whatever this show. The intrigue of what this show is enough to sell it to me. So I don't even know if I'm necessarily complaining that loudly about it. It's just, it's a B move, not an A move for me as far as like creating interest in this show. And Ewan says here, Bianca Robertson staring at the lights. Simon says here, Juice Robinson Street Pin Eater. Yeah, that's probably his role there. But like, yeah, I don't know. I just think in general, going back to like this fight announcement, it's like it's just all credit to Steph for pulling that one out. The same's happened in Canada. The Canadians have only found out this week where they're going to be able to watch Collision, and it sounds like it's going to be buried away on a VOD subscription service or whatever like that. It's not going to be on primetime TV over there either. I think some of the messaging really needs to get cleaned up this week. I think we need to, it's all well and good Tony Khan being like, oh, it's I'm not outright saying whether it's a roster split or not. You guys are going to find out. And it's like, well, that's cool. But like, we as hardcore, and I think the majority of AEW fans are probably like us, hardcore fans who are reading this news and, know that there's a roster split coming. But the company hasn't actually said that. Instead, like, I watch TNT and TBS a lot on my obviously perfectly legally obtained stream. And on there is a lot of ads for it. It's great, and Punk's all over them now, and that's great. But it's like, watch this show, and it's got like Thunder Rosa and Miro and Andrade and all of those types of people on it. And you can work out yourself probably, oh, hang on, that's a lot of wrestlers I don't really see on Dynamite, so I guess this is different. But it's not explicitly spelt out. And I feel like they maybe need to now, this week is the time. Let's explicitly spell it out. This is what this show is. This is the mission statement. This is why you need to watch it in addition to Dynamite, maybe not even instead of. This is why this is important. This is why it's not, Rampage. This is why it's, it's going to be big time, prime time, Saturday Night Wrestling. And I think they're kind of just hoping Punk's name on the marquee is going to do that job for them. But I don't know. I think they just need to go those couple of steps further. Like I say, it's not a complete travesty. I'm relatively bullish on the number it's going to do, at least for the first show. But I do think it's time to kind of put your best foot forward. And I think linked to that, I think, the came up from WrestleNomics this week, and there's a lot of reasons for this, but, the numbers for Collision going forward, as far as, interest goes, and as far as people being excited to go to the shows, never mind watch it on TV. So, WrestleNomics add these numbers from this week, and it's like, it doesn't look great. It looks a little bit like, obviously they're overdoing Canada. We were talking to WH about this privately, and that's something he raised. The fact that they're in Toronto like 4 times in that period, with there's Dynamite taping on the Wednesday, a Collision on the Thursday, Forbidden Doors on the weekend, and then Hamilton, which is also Ontario. Shock of shocks, JP has only sifted 800 tickets because, as WH kind of explained to us, that's a 2-hour drive out of Toronto that you're not going to do if you know you can see AEW like 3 other times that week, like why would you bother with that? And it's like I don't know how much where do you foot the blame for that? Is it a lack of understanding or excitement of what Collision is? Is it overdoing this kind of mini Collision tour in it and Canada, or just the AEW tour in general? Is it a sign that maybe Punk isn't a stronger draw as we think? I'm open to that conversation. Yes, they've got 8,200 tickets out for Chicago, but it's a massive outlier compared to those other numbers. What do you think the story is here with with like say some of these numbers like 800, 1,300? They're indie show numbers. that's
They
not
are.
that's not a good look for a company as big as AEW.
That's like Northeast Wrestling numbers for it. I mean, the reason for this is from the get-go, they needed big announcements. Otherwise, it just seemed like another show. And like you say, it was already kind of oversaturated as it was. And then they added in a whole load of other shows late afterwards. The reason behind this, and the reason why I think there are problems, and we've come on to this issue several times, is so they take the show because this is a hell of a lot of money. And it takes them obviously clearly over that 100 million a year threshold. The problem is with a company like this, and you can see this in the kind of advertising and marketing and at times the lack of joined up thinking that AEW has, they haven't got the infrastructure. They haven't got people who are asking perhaps the kind of questions that we're asking. Like, why are you doing this here? Do we need to not take this somewhere else? Got a split crew? Do you need them all in the same part of the world? If you are going to do that, though, do you need two kind of different touring companies? That's a whole series of TV production equipment, everything else. And that's obviously incredibly expensive. In terms of the shows, when these first, like adding on Punk after the fact, I don't think necessarily helps outside of Chicago. And even in Chicago, as soon as United Center was put there, they kind of knew what it was. But the problem is with it is I think they have made an assumption. CM Punk's on it and he's a draw. And it's like, well, the problem is that you've got no momentum that you're adding this onto. And it's not like they're going to be hitting Hamilton with loads of localized advertising, everything else. Because as I say, they haven't got the infrastructure for it to be able to arrange that. And I think these are where the things as the company grows that you can really see that being the case. That there's a lot of, we need this because we kind of, we want to be able to take this money and you'd be fools not to. But what they haven't done is they haven't kind of properly organized it as well. And, Steph mentions there the quote in the chat that, a lot of the Canadians been salty about that Toronto Rampage. I know Davey is still angry about it to this day. Dave from Poison Rana. So why would they trust it?
The price as well, like the ticket prices, like I've seen people like say it's basically double what WWE would charge for the equivalent in some cases for certain areas of the building. Like AEW has become, and this seems to have happened since Cody left, become more of a premium ticket thing, and that's obviously going to increase your gates. But for a tour like this, I feel like I'd be going in cheap when you're expecting a lot out of a smaller market of people. I think the other big thing, JP, you mentioned split crews there. I think it's not a unreasonable thing to say, and I'll say this as the CM Punk fan. It'd sell some tickets in Canada, Kenny Omega. It'd sell some tickets in Canada, Chris Jericho, the Canadian stars of AEW that aren't on Collision. I think there might be something to that. Expecting Punk and his band of outlaws and his mates to sell these places out, might be an ask, and that's a problem when there are obvious WWE have found over the last 20 odd bloody years. There's loads of negatives to running, roster splits, but there's also positives, that you got to talk about. And there's positives here. Collision feels like it might be a fresh show, different thing to Dynamite. I'm excited for it. But the negative is you are literally, you're diluting because you're trying to run shows with half of what would have been your available crew, and where you might have been able to put your Canadian stars front and center on the poster and just have, Christian next to Jericho next to Kenny or whatever it is. You can't even do that. I think Sean Spears is the Canadian star so far for Collision. That's a big element of it too. I think that's for all we laugh about big British star needed for AEW to run in the UK. If you've got one and they work for your company, you should be using them. It just makes sense, doesn't it? Like we always say about the especially Jamie Hayter and the women when they come to Wembley. I think that's a missed trick as well. But yeah, there will absolutely be This is probably, you know, it's a conversation again to Blood the Discord one time we kind of having this week about Rampage and whether, you know, Tony Khan overpromising and under-delivering on Rampage caused any real issue. And you can go both ways on that. I can absolutely see the argument that he's a promoter, so he should promote, and he shouldn't be telling you this show fucking sucks, don't watch it. But I think, you know, when he was pushed, especially at presses, is Rampage really an A show anymore, Tony? And he'd be like, "Oh no, the next few weeks we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that. It's, you know, it's absolutely an A show." And you know, it wasn't true. I think there's an erosion of like consumer trust. I think that comes with that. You can argue about how big, you know, that erosion is and how massively that really affects things, but I do think there's an element of that, as Chris says here in the chat, that's on some fans' minds as well. It's like
Yeah.
a wait and see. Let's see what Collision is. We're podcasters. I've seen loads of like people kind of, you know, making plans for on their networks for shit. We need the Saturday night show now. Oh shit, when are you going to review Collision? Spoiler: we're going to be reviewing Collision next Monday on Spotlight. Might mean Dynamite gets shifted along, but more on that next week. But like, people are moving lives around, but then I'm seeing the same people going, but at the same time, let's give it a few weeks and see how much Tony's still into it. And maybe it ends up getting moved into like, you know, another day. Maybe we don't need to stay up late on a Saturday to review this stuff. I think everyone's cautious. Absolutely.
And I think the bigger thing is if we're thinking that Warner Brothers Discovery hasn't signed whatever deal that it's always been rumored to kind of be on the cards, maybe because they want to see how this works. So it's not the kind of thing that I think he can take lightly. And this is where the booking of the show becomes absolutely imperative. If this has a different feel to it, like my hope is ultimately for Collision, is that it's wilder, because some of these broken misfit toys used correctly could be great, like a Miro. The thing that we haven't seen of him in AEW, like Andrade, you know, like so many other people as well, is actually intriguing matchups. They've generally been lost in bullshit feuds, which are fucking Andrade was messing around with Matt Hardy for months. And you go, really? This is the best use of him and everything else. They haven't done those things. And that's the only thing, is interesting storylines, because they are interesting characters. And if you actually put them in there in some unique matchups, and Punk is willing to work with a lot of these guys, like Powerhouse Hobbs going back and forth with Punk over 3 to 4 weeks would do the fucking world of good for him. Not expecting him to beat him, but he'd do the world of good for him. And it's those kind of interactions are the thing that I'm looking forward to. Because even on Dynamite, I do come away thinking, these are the matches I'd like to see, and instead I'm getting this.
Yeah, I'm fundamentally, I think that's the thing. Like that's my hope, and that's where I am positive on Collision. We can talk all the numbers and stuff like that, but as far as a wrestling show, like I'm, you know, yeah, Dynamite is overstuffed, you know, and that is absolutely true. Whether it's stuff with always the best stuff they could do is another question. But that's where you've now got this Saturday. Maybe if, you know, it is true that Punk and Ace Steel are handling creative in some form, you know, whether that's a good or a bad thing, we'll find out. But it's a different, you know, mindset. You know, if Brian's involved, which apparently is the rumor as well. That's another, you know, different mind who maybe approaches things a little bit differently, and we might get, you know, a different type of storytelling, and it might have that very early positive that the WWE roster split had all that way back when, that like, oh, SmackDown became the wrestling show with Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar on it. Maybe less of a positive, but Raw was like the sports entertainment show. But the thing you could say about them is they felt different, and they felt like for a very short period, because of course it's Vince and everything becomes the same. Eventually, they had different mission statements, and I'm excited for that. Maybe there's a different way, like you say, telling those stories with those bit part characters. So I'm still excited for it on Saturday. I'll be up late for it on Saturday. Don't know whether it'll be an every week thing. You know, that's another thing with people our end of the world. Dynamite at 1 a.m. on a Wednesday, being knackered for work on a Thursday is one thing. I suppose it's a Saturday night, so it's not a big of a problem on Sunday, but it's a big commitment to ask our fans. So yeah. We'll see what our excitement levels are. We're gonna have Gareth on next week, aren't we, to chat the debut Collision episode. But yeah, it's all very exciting stuff. I just like to see them put the foot on the gas a little bit and lean into that excitement.
Yeah.